Well, this is still recording. Awesome. Let's stop that. Welcome back to This Is Here, the final episode of the 2024-2025 school year. I am Adam Schechter. I am the instructional technology coach or school-based technology specialist here at John R. Lewis High School. Coming at you from a very empty and quiet TV studio. In fact, if I look out the door, it's very dark and all the doors are open. So who knows? Maybe unless I go ahead and close it, someone might pop in and I don't know. But right now I'm testing out some live streaming. So maybe if you're listening to the audio version of this podcast, it might not sound as polished as normal because there may not be as great editing opportunities. And also I want to put the video up as well, just because I'm kind of running on that as like a test. And if you didn't catch it already, I've already put out a video podcast. Now it seems like a long time ago. What, April? Maybe? Was it then? Time has no meaning right now. But it was a start of a series I definitely hope to continue about some of the technology that I use. It's actually going to be gearing up towards VSTE, the Virginia Society for Technology and Education, that conference that is coming up in December. I'll get more to that later. If you want to reach out to me or the show, the best way to do so is through our email account and social media handles. So that would be This Is Here Pod, and that is on X, Twitter, whatever we're calling it now. I also think there's This Is Here Pod over on the Blue Sky thing, which I don't check as much. In fact, I threw out the live stream link on Lancer EdTech, which is one word, on the Blue Sky thing. So I have honestly no idea how to hype that up, that link. That is like, I got no clue. All right. So I'm also enjoying my morning coffee as well. We are recording this on June 16th, 2025, which is a teacher workday here in Fairfax County. So a lot of our staff members are still on contract and are working at home, I guess, on video professional development. I don't really know, but they are working from an alternate location. I'm here in the building just for a little while this morning. In fact, this is actually the big thing that I wanted to do. So there you go. I did want to talk about this year and some of the things that went well, some of the things I want to work on again. And this is geared towards like my work here at Lewis High School. It's also trying to broaden that out to make it certainly relevant for any of you that's listening that's not part of Lewis High School or Fairfax County here in Virginia. So I do have some thoughts on EdTech, at least as this year has gone, and what the future is looking like. So I'm also going to preview a little bit of what I'm looking to do at VSTE, some of the stuff over the summer, and where like Lancer Media and other things that I'm working on are going. And hopefully that's something that is relevant and interesting to anyone that is checking out this show. So let's dive in. All right. So I do want to start as far as successes go, to start with the positive side of that coin. I am thankful at least to be working in this environment. I think that Lewis High School has been an awesome place to start ideas, kind of get conversations going, just seeing where things take off. And I'm very fortunate to have an administration, like my own administrator, that would be Kim Harrison, who's our director of student services. So she oversees the tech department here. And I'm always grateful and thankful to have an administrator who believes in the work that I'm doing and gives me the freedom to explore all of the avenues to bring a lot of my ideas to life and to really work in that area of student progress and creating things that are interesting for students and giving them student experiences sort of without a lot of the fluff or any like pushback or other stuff. So just to have that freedom to explore and really look at, just just be myself, I think, is probably the best way to put it. It's something that I appreciate every single day that I'm working here. I think some of the more interesting successes I've had this year were working with our multilingual learners. So our school is about 40% multilingual learners. Many of them are Spanish speakers. A lot of them are here as their first experience in U.S. schools, and they're here and they come from a number of countries in Central and South America. So when they come here, some of them have had formal schooling before, some of them have not. It is very much a mixed bag. So trying to meet those students with their needs and to get them successful, not just to learn English, but also learn content and learn all sorts of like everything else that's thrown at them as any other high schooler, sometimes is not easy. And the work that I've done with a lot of those teachers, particularly the multi-language learner teachers or ESOL teachers, depending on who's tagging them, I guess. It's been a lot of fun. It's been very interesting. And, I've worked certainly with one teacher in particular that at the beginning of the year, she had her students go and do an introduction and do talk about their interests like in English, and then to see them at the end of the year and really check that progress going at the end was really remarkable. And so utilizing our broadcast space and recording and making them near like anchors for our TV show, it was intimidating at first, and then at the end of the year they were able to, many of them, be very fluent, and you can just tell like how much they have learned in just 1 year. So that was really awesome. I think there's going to be a lot more work with our multi-language learners. I think some of the technology that's out there to help support them and also increase their confidence and communication, I think that's just going to lead to some awesome stuff. So I was really happy to work with those students and like maybe do some podcast projects, that sort of stuff. There was some assessment planning and some like coordination here amongst some of the other teachers, like doing some other projects and other like instructional work. And I know one of the difficulties, at least with this position over time, has been kind of needling you in and working directly with teachers. Because at the high school level, and I know this not necessarily as a high school teacher, but as a middle school teacher, it's like having resources, but then also using them are two very different things. And so, like you enjoy that autonomy and you enjoy like teacher agency, and a lot of teachers kind of talk about that. I mean, I know talk about that with my own position here. But then as a classroom teacher, like I also was fortunate enough to have a lot of autonomy for the activities that I wanted to do. And I had administration that was supportive of, the ideas I put forth in my own classroom. And they weren't micromanaging me or like making me submit daily lesson plans and commenting on them or saying I should do this or that or whatever. No, they were always very supportive. And so, I think when you have that, and certainly at the school you definitely do, for the individual teachers, when you have that, it's sometimes hard to hand that over to a coach, even if it's another teacher, right? So whether it's an instructional coach or like a technology coach like I am or something like that, having like realizing what this resource and what I can provide is all about is not easy. It's a really big barrier. Because I think a lot of teachers kind of look at it as giving up control or, having somebody else plan your lessons, and they take pride in that, and I totally get it. But I certainly would like to work a little bit more on that next year. And I had some really good success with multimedia projects. So I do want to shout out like Chris Ingram. We worked well together on a number of different projects and expanded one from last year. So I did talk in an earlier episode about our Romeo and Juliet film trailers. And I think every year that we work on that project, I think every year it gets better. I think you kind of see what the students do, and then you manage the expectations. You're seeing like where they were successful, where are things where they can improve on. Do you want them to be more explicit when talking about, say, themes or characters, or using the script and the dialogue? And so every year we're able to like modify that project and make it even better. I thought the trailers that the students produced this year were fantastic. There were a lot of great examples of the different themes in Romeo and Juliet, and when you watch the trailers, many of them showed that very clearly. And so I think if that was the goal of this project, of students being able to demonstrate their understanding of what these themes mean and also able to carry it out, many of them were very successful. So I was very pleased with that, and to work with them. And this year we did, it wasn't so much of a collaboration. I think they did a lot of it in class, but to welcome them into the TV studio here and have them work on a podcast that was related to, was it Escape from Camp 14? I always forget the name of the book, but it's about escaping a North Korean camp, like a work camp. And a lot of the students, from what I could tell, they understand what was in the book, and they understand like some of the struggles of the characters, and they're able to point out some of the details that showed like their understanding of character development or the themes or things in that book that they were trying to point out. And so they expressed that through podcasts. So that was awesome. Let's see. Sometimes my years like kind of run together. I think we did was that this year we did the recording in Spanish class and world language? I want to say yes, maybe in IB. Or that last year? It's like, man, it's like things just roll together. I think it was this year where we had the students record in Spanish their different, like one was recording sort of a drama, I think, of the different, in their food unit. I thought that was kind of awesome. Sometimes I forget like what year is it? Like what year is it? So that kind of work this year was great. I'm hoping to build on that more next year. I think there are a lot of opportunities with, I think some of the tools that are more accessible for students in video creation. They're just going to get better. So a product like Google Vids that's come out this year was an awesome like resource, and playing around with it a little bit, or showing, say, one of our other, I guess it's like a level 1 in the ESOL class. I think they're level 1. But they're definitely self-contained, working with a class like on creating sort of a virtual tour of our school, and all of the students kind of had little parts and they recorded it, and I was able to upload their footage and use Google Vids for like adding graphics and just creating a cohesive like video that strung together all of their clips. Like that was great. So hoping to work on that a little bit more next year. And like there's some like seeds planted of different projects, kind of working again with Mr. Ingram next year. He got World War Z approved as a novel, as a book. So I think his 11th graders are going to read it next year. And we're starting to percolate. Like there are some ideas floating about, we're going to do like an end of the world podcast, or maybe like a vlog, or something else where it might carry on the theme or the style of the book. And now the students kind of have to create like another scene out of it, or, like sort of put themselves in that world, perhaps, in some way, shape, or form. So those are like kind of an idea, I think, for next year. So, like Google Vids, like Canva, Adobe Express. So all those tools are just getting better with video creation. So what was it? There was another one with Google Vids, working with one of our social studies teachers, and it was, he called it like a hostage video, where, these like different elements of like the Cultural Revolution. It's like the little red book. was talking about themselves and sort of how they came to be, and then how later on they like dropped out of prominence, that sort of stuff. So it was fun. It was fun. So I enjoyed that this year as a coach and kind of working with those sorts of things. VSTE this year was also very successful in my eyes. I enjoyed heading down there to Virginia Beach back in December. Gave a presentation that took, what was it? Almost like an hour to put together because I had no idea what I was doing. I was in what they call like an innovation station, which literally meant I was presenting in the hallway, like between some of the conference rooms. And what I did not get at the time, I kind of went over this in my reflection. What I didn't understand is that it wasn't quite a formal presentation space. Like, it really was meant for kind of grab and go, and people kind of dropping in and out, and all of that. And so, but I definitely had like some people come over and check out some of the things we talked about. This is more equipment based. So the goal of this year was, it was called Audio Ventures Ahoy. And the goal was to kind of go over some different equipment from basic microphones all the way through to like, the Rodecaster that this is running on, or, what the DJI, right? So the DJI that's recording this is a webcam in its webcam mode, which is pretty cool. So, yeah, like we're just showcasing some of the different equipment at different price ranges, and like what can schools afford, and sort of balancing that. Like we had that here where, I'll get to cell phones I think in a little bit, but that challenge of, okay, well, the expectation is that students are going to put away their cell phones all day. All right. Well, how is that going to work when a project that I've done for 2 years basically requires them to use their cell phones around? So I don't know. But we had to like kind of go around that problem and work it out. And one of the solutions I had were finding like camcorders and a Rode Go microphone that wasn't too expensive. I think the microphone's $75 or so, and the camera itself, I mean, it's about $300, I think. So not a totally cheap solution, but creating like a backpack class camera set, when you think about, okay, you get about 6 groups or so in a class when they're working together. So it's all told roughly, I think it was like a $2,000 or so investment by our school. And again, that's not chump change. I'm not saying that that's like a small amount and, all that, but there are ways that you can be less reliant on phones for creating content, and then more on some of the tech that you can get that will still give you good results, and not as expensive as you might think. So that was the whole point of my VSTE presentation, and it was mostly audio based. So I brought a lot of microphones and microphone sets and things like that. And this year, I've made some inroads. So I've had some really good conversations with folks from like B&H, and so we're kind of talking about stuff, and who knows where that exactly will go. But there's there's something there. But kind of working with something like that, and right now for VSTE coming up in December, the session I'm going to run in, they call it a flexible space. Again, I'm like, I don't know what these things are, but I'm like, it's like, I'm just going to go truck all the gear down there and figure it out, right? Like 2 years ago, it was all about podcasting, and I set up a podcast studio in Roanoke and didn't really get to use it that much. In fact, I did it twice because I had to go and do the virtual presentation. What a disaster that was, right? It just crashed. Ugh, my computer just blew up and all that. So I had that. And then, this year being in that sort of innovation station area. And when I started seeing them, because I presented, I believe, on Monday, when I started seeing them on Sunday, And I go, oh, that's what they're doing. Like it really was just sort of demos. It's just sort of drive-by kind of things. So that wasn't really my presentation per se, but went off. Okay. Now I'm going to be in their flexible space. So I think this year coming up, I have a session called Tools of the Storyteller. So that's the name of it. And I want to focus in terms of like my presentations for next year about like storytelling as a powerful student instructional tool. It really weaves through a lot of different contents and curriculums, certainly different grade levels, and just having that as like a through line to talk about. Again, it's going to be more equipment heavy, but it's also going to be linking up some of the projects that you can do with some of this equipment, and having ready-made project examples and also like the gear that kind of goes with it. So if you're coming to my presentation, hopefully in December at VSTE, like that's really going to be the goal is to leave with an understanding of some of the basics with the equipment, how to use it, creating stories on it. Again, I'll have like a lot of the microphones, but I'm also adding more video elements. So in the last 2 years, it's been more audio based. And then this year, I'm going to talk a little bit more about video. So whether it's like the Pocket Osmo camera that is running right now in this feed, or the Panasonic camcorders, and then even some of the other like bigger camcorders that we have that we use mostly for Lancer Media. Like I think it's gonna be great. So yeah, check it out coming up. So that's VSTE, and kind of making inroads in there. There's so much talk about like what AI is doing and transforming, and one thing I have found, at least with creation of multimedia, is that it requires the students to work. And maybe AI is going to give you like a script idea or prompts or that sort of stuff for interviews. But it's not going to yet be able to fully create your video. And I say yet because I know that there are some AI video tools out there which are awesome. But we're not like quite there yet. So, you're still making students work together and collaborate and create their project together. And so that like, it's one of the big things about why I love multimedia projects so much is because of all of the skills and then also the content. So like, again, I've done lots and lots and lots of presentations and episodes about that, but at the core of it, I think, multimedia projects are going to be so much more important and valuable going forward, like, especially with this era of AI, that it's going to be a very valuable tool, just because of the requirements. And also at the moment, it's pretty hard to duplicate a lot of podcasts and videos, particularly like in AI. Yes, I know Notebook LM will do it for you. That's true. And we're getting better with video, but generally like the tools that students have access to, really forces them to be the creators here. So I think going forward, like we're going to have that as a thing. All right, let's see. What else this year that was awesome? I did get VSTE certified, so that was new. We are a lighthouse school. I kind of talked about lighthouse a little bit here in Fairfax County. So there is a lighthouse project where several schools are supposed to be leading innovation. And I guess if that's going to go into my struggles for the year, it's a good transition. I think, as great as the year was, I think there were certainly some struggles. I think lighthouse is a struggle for us, to define it, to really talk about like its relevancy. And I think there's a lot at play. There's a lot of different factors for that. First, I think as a school, like myself, it just wasn't something I had as much energy, I think, for this year as I wanted to. Some of the things that like were pulling myself in different directions, like it just wasn't a priority for me. And I kind of ghosted the whole lighthouse thing for many months, just not, showing up to meetings or like our Zoom chats or things like that. And it's not something I'm particularly proud of, like as a professional, because we did make that commitment as a school to be involved in this project. But It's kind of like one of those things that just sort of happen. But the good news, at least about Lighthouse, is that we are trying to reinvigorate it for next year. We do have a group. Our librarians has put together like a summer study group about AI, particularly. So there's a few AI books that we're reading as a group of staff. I think mine is mostly about like AI and education and curriculum planning. So I wish I had the book in front of me, but I do not. It's upstairs. But I'm excited to kind of read that book, but also to talk with members of that team, because I feel like the teachers that are interested in AI and interested in all those advances are also the ones that are going to want to be part of the Lighthouse team going forward. So being able to have that happen, and being able to try and put that team back together and getting back involved next year, I think that's going to be good. We do want to innovate, and I think that there are a lot of teachers in this building that do want to be part of that effort, and I'm hoping to lead that effort. So we'll see. It should be good. Like I'm excited about collaborating with like our instructional coaches a little bit more for next year. I think that will be like a good relationship there. But no, that part was a little bit of a struggle, like having that team together. And I think sometimes as a tech coach, certainly a lot of people, like in my own position, I think similarly, we've had so many conversations about if there's one thing that we talk about, either new coaches or even veteran coaches, we really talk about like defining our role. It's when you talk about being like a technology coach, it's not like being an administrator. It's not like being a classroom teacher. It's one of these roles in a school that can be defined by your administrator, because they may have needs, they may have things that they want you to do. It could also be defined by staff because of the way that they see you. And so if they're looking at you as someone that helps like fix things or solve problems or do that, that's what they see, out of me. And so, I do still kind of have that, like we do kind of struggle, I think, as a group of tech specialists and tech coaches to try and define ourselves as instructional leaders. And so, as I did mention, we do have another instructional coach coming in who's been in this building before, and I'm excited to like work with her next year and collaborate. And I feel like that's like a good entry with some of our teams, and being able to like define what I do, define what our instructional coaches do, because we do have two different jobs. And I think for next year, going forward, it's gonna be good. Like, I say that now. It's June. I say that now. All right. And then I think Lancer Media is another area of growth. We start talking about like what a student news team can do. Just trying to like set that example for others, and kind of be like an exemplar group. So right now we're still a club. We have coming in, we have like a really good group of students that are like 10th and 11th graders at the moment. So we're coming in to be 10th and 11th graders. And that's exciting, because that means that if we can get things going the way I would like, these are going to be my leaders for the next few years and really set that foundation for what our media group is able to do. And they did like a lot of great projects. They did run the weekly show, like that was managed. They had a bunch of times they had to record by themselves. Now it's successful. So I've been able to kind of like give them the keys, let's say, and just see where they take it. So we had a lot of that. We had a lot of enthusiasm. I think we had a lot of students that were just interested in being like part of the group, and that's cool. But as I discussed with them, like with that enthusiasm also came like not as much institutional knowledge. So it's not like they knew like what to do. It's like, I want to make a video. All right, great. Do you know how to edit? No. And so there was so many of that where like I am one person, so I need to try and share that out with the other students, but not so many of the students have that knowledge that they can show each other. So that's one big thing I think going into next year with Lancer Media that I'm excited about is that we have all of our officers like -1. All of our officer roles are filled, and they're filled with students that I know will do a good job. It's just like kind of getting that out of them, and we shall see. But yeah, going into next year, we're gonna have a really solid year. They ran our Rising Ninth Grade event. They showed our ninth graders coming in like what that's gonna look like and what being in our TV studio is like, and so that was cool for them to have that experience. And again, I wasn't here, so I come back and there's a list of students that are interested in being part of Lancer Media. So, clearly they made a pretty good impression if there were students that are coming in that, are like, all right, I'm ready to join. We actually had a few students come from our middle school. We did a few events and they, I think one of them for sure will sign up with us for next year. It's already on the list. So to have that pipeline, particularly with our middle school, who this year started their own news show. So to try and collaborate more with them between like exposing them to what our kids can do and what the group here does. And then also going maybe to their school and like helping them, really builds that bridge. So next year should be fun. We've also had some great working like collaborations with the pros. So for the second year, we went to Meet the Pros as sponsored by the Capital Area Emmys Association. And we brought a few students and they made some inroads for sure. So I do want to shout out like Brian Hopkins and Leanna Golden from WJLA. So our 7 ABC News affiliate here. Both of them came out and did workshops on reporting and, video photography. And I think what our kids will take from that, you already saw, there were some pieces this year that were like phenomenal. We did a great piece on a toy drive. One of our students did. We did a great piece on the service dogs coming and visiting. And, we had a piece on 2 of our students making all-state orchestra. And so you can clearly see like the influence that both of those workshops had like on these students. So I'm hoping in the fall this continues to kind of keep that communication channel open, and hoping in the fall you reach out to other content creators. So like one in particular, which is like a fan, I'm a big fan of, is you call it their YouTube channel is the Gasselcast, and they run a toy company called Mischief Toys, and they have like all these characters that they've created. They have artists that have like really brought these things to life, and there's a story behind them, and they're running events. And in fact, I just went to what they call the Day of Mischief back in May before Memorial Day. I've seen them at New York Comic Con. So, whenever I've had a chance to talk to them, it'd be like, hey, I run a high school news show. Would you be willing to like come on like a Zoom call and like talk about it? And they're like, yeah, let's go. So, like things like that, I have to like just make happen. So I think that'd be awesome for them to see like what, not like beyond like formal like broadcast journalism, what you can do, like what sort of the YouTube world is like. I think that'd be a really, really fun thing to do too. Let's see. So, and then like my next level, I know last year I kind of talked about being certified in English so I can teach broadcast journalism and treat Lancer Media more as a class than a club. So that's still on the agenda. That's one of the items I didn't quite get to this year, but we'll see. And like I said, like in the summer, kind of getting ready for these students to come in, and having resources available, having teams, like having spots where they can fit in and work. I think that's going to be a lot of the tasks for the officers coming in, is to get those students like into our group, like really get them adjusted into the group culture, like give them projects to work on, like give them a reason to want to be in Lancer Media. Like they, not complain that it's boring or like, what are we doing here or any of that kind of stuff. Like get them involved. And, just to have these students involved, I think will help grow our program, but also create members that are, essential and ones that are very productive for us and are doing some awesome projects. And that just begets like other great things that we want to do, including like the homecoming sports special. So we want to do the homecoming football special in October. I think that's going to be like really fun to do like a college game day like experience. So we definitely want to do that. I don't know if it's going to involve the FCPS production truck. I hear that it's not quite in the best of shape, but whatevs. We do have the tools here. I can certainly make it happen for here with some guidance and assistance, I think, from our friends over at the county level who help with the new show. So shout out to them. All right. So, I think going into the summer and into the fall, I think there's a lot of great things happening with Lancer Media. All right. So next year, New Year in Tech. The pendulum as far as tech use and adoption is changing. And I think it's like, I don't know if I'd call it like a pendulum, maybe like a tug of war. Like we went through the pandemic, we went through like virtual school, and then that was all on computers. And then we had teachers back in the building shortly thereafter, and that started to turn into getting away. Like I wanted to be more paper based, and I've talked to a few teachers who are like, I'm going back to pencil and paper or pen and paper assessments and things like that because I can't give them tests on the computer. Like between not having a locked browser, between AI and all the other things that they have at their fingertips, like I can't do that. So we're just going to have, paper exams now. So cool. I totally understand that. And we're going to run into things like, what to do about cell phones. This year we had no cell phones in class. We didn't have those Yonder pouches. We were not part of a school that had that pilot. Instead, we had students that were putting their phones in like a holder over the door. And generally it worked okay. But again, it was really up to individual teachers to be monitoring that situation and set those guidelines. And then next year, I believe the law was just signed that would, from K to 12, just bar phone use from start of the day to the end of the day, bell to bell. So our students this past year were allowed to use their phones during lunch. They were allowed to use them during transition time in the hallway, not in the bathrooms at all, in any circumstances. No. But like you would still see, especially during lunch and things like that, like kids were putting their phones up against the windowsills and they were recording TikToks, or, they were very much on their phones, walking from one class to the other, to the point where I wanted to walk around the building with like a pool noodle and just be, just kind of hold it like horizontally and just see like how many students I would just tap on the head that weren't paying attention at all. And then at lunch, it was like a mixed thing. Like you go into the cafeteria and certainly they're talking to each other, but then, you also had like the fair share of students that were just like doom scrolling on Instagram or TikTok or whatever they were doing. So, we'll see what happens next year. It's great that you can legislate such a thing, but it's always about who's going to enforce it. And I know, like, as a classroom teacher with that management piece, it's a lot of energy. And, as a classroom teacher, it's like you are vigilant, but you're vigilant for so many things. And now you're throwing cell phone enforcement on there. So I'm glad we had this year. I'm glad we had this expectation. We started at the beginning of the year. I thought generally the teachers that carried it out with, not to use that cliche, but with fidelity, purposefully, intentionally, they got their students into that routine, and there wasn't a lot of arguing. There wasn't a lot of like stolen cell phones. Like a lot of things that I actually was worried about at the beginning of the year, like didn't quite happen. So great for that. But that's going to go into next year. It's like you're going to need that strong enforcement from teachers. Like you are going to have to go into that next year and just continue to set that standard and be consistent. Like it's really all that stuff that they talk about with classroom management since the dawn of education. Like you set the clear expectations and you follow through. So I think cell phones are going to be the same way. But next year you're going to have you could have student access to AI. So right now in our county, they're still struggling with the role of AI. They're trying to, we have Gemini right now from Google. Like I think we're paying for it. So staff does have access to it, and we've been really encouraging staff to use it for, some repetitive tasks, data analysis. We can now put student data into Gemini because it's not being used to train the model. So now you're allowed to have students' work be up there and evaluate it, set rubrics, give students feedback. And so we're going to run into a lot of, I think, philosophical discussions about how good or bad of an idea that is. And you're going to have teachers that are like going to be all for it, some that are resistant to it. And I certainly understand arguments like both ways, right? So you might have on the one hand, you're like, well, this is great because now I can go and provide some of the feedback that maybe I didn't have a chance to do. Now I can give it to them on drafts or like early versions of their work, right? And it could be timely. It could be returned to them much quicker than what I could do like as a teacher. And, I think for me, if I was grading a lot of like writing projects or things like that, I'd welcome that, right? But I wouldn't want to be relying on it. I wouldn't want to say, okay, well now the AI is going to grade my students' work for their summative grade. Like I wouldn't want to do that. So, I can certainly see its use for giving them that formative feedback, like as they grow as writers. Some things that it's good for. It's good for syntax. It's good for like some of the, it's good for, what was it? Just lost my train of thought. Sorry. So like it's good for like the grammar correction and things like that. So, like we don't want to be too overly reliant on it, I think, as we go forward. But the big, you want it to plan lessons. It certainly can create some lesson structures. I think it can help in terms of like, here are my standards, like help me like start ideating some lessons I can do with students like on different contents. That's cool. I heard it. I don't exactly remember where, but I've certainly heard like an 80-20 kind of relationship here where you can, put out a prompt and then get whatever the AI is going to give you. And that's like, could be like 80% of the work. And then your 20% is adapting it for you, like personalizing for you. So it's not letting it do like the whole thing, but like you kind of going back and forth and trying it out. I don't know. I have not used AI so much for like plan this lesson on this thing. Like my predominant use is like, hey, I want to do this thing in Google Sheets. Cool. Tell me how to like what formulas to use, or even some of the coding when I want to do like app scripts. So I did like a app script that when a certain form was filled out or completed and that was noted, staff got an email that said, okay, cool, this form was submitted. Now go ahead and like sign up for your administrator checkout. So I thought I was like the bee's knees there, right? So that's what I'm primarily using it for. I understand like some of the thought partnery stuff. Like I'd like to try that more in the future and see if I'm comfortable or see if that's like something that works in my flow. But I don't know. So, that role for teachers, I think next year will be very interesting to explore and see like the groups that sort of develop from, who wants to be all gung ho about it to like who thinks that this is the worst idea ever. And then who's sort of in the middle. Like that's going to be a very fascinating, I think, conversation. The other part about this is what happens when, students are already using it. Yes. But what happens when that's a tool that's available for students to use on their computers on the school network, which is different. I'm not going to get into a whole like equity and, what happens in those areas where the kids have their computers at home and they can just use AI all the time. And like say students like in this area here, where, we kind of draw our population from is not as well off. And so a student's Chromebook might be the only computer they have in the house. Okay, I'm not getting into all that. But the reality, I think, for next year, particularly at the secondary level, is that, I can tell you my own school district is about ready to start letting students use it, or at least have access to it during the day, like on our network, on their Chromebooks. And what in the world will that do? I've got no idea, right? So I already have English teachers like last year going crazy because they wanted to cut this off, before it got started. We're an IB school and our IB diploma candidates are expected to write that extended essay, and that's a very lengthy process. And so the dangers of that now having sort of AI like infect that extended essay, at least in their eyes, like it could already be happening. Like they're vigilant to that. So like they're advising with these essays and like that's part of it now as well. Like I just, I don't know. So it's not an easy road to navigate. And I'm thinking at least for now, got to see what the kids are wanting to do with it, or like really, again, like what are the expectations? AI checkers are not fantastic yet for text. They are astonishingly pretty good for photos, but when it comes to like the text and things like that, it's a mixed bag, right? Like Turnitin or plagiarism checker, like that has an AI checker too, and how great is that? It's like sometimes hits, sometimes doesn't. And there are certainly horror stories on each side where it doesn't, miss this thing, but then certainly flagged something else that wasn't AI at all and flagged it. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, the way teachers will use it for next year with their students, like, can we use it in a productive way where we're encouraging them to like have AI sort of help expand ideas, or at least create little threads, like the start of stuff, and have them take over? Maybe that'd be good too. Like, it's going to be pretty wild, but yeah, I mean, I think the running joke is that next year we're going to have, student, like AI produced student work getting evaluated by, AI generated teachers, scripts, and like, they're just going to be talking to each other. And I know that we've talked, I've heard a lot about like how terrible this is going to be going in the future for Google or, like search results and, like the training on these, AI models in the future, because basically like they're just going to be training on their own, like AI generated muck and all of that. So I don't know. It's everyone talks about, well, we can't be on like the wrong side of this, or like everyone freaked out when we got calculators because now we didn't have to do math in our heads. And so there's so many I think, viewpoints about this is sort of the end of the world for education, or this is the beginning of something amazing. And I don't know. I think my view is like it's somewhere in between. I think the promise of AI is not quite on par with the results, or at least what's the capabilities right now. Is that going to change? Yeah, probably. But for now, gotta just kind of take it one step at a time. And I think next year going, like when it comes to tech tools and it comes to like the what we use and all of that, we kind of go back into thinking about blended learning. I think we think about, tech can't be the answer all the time. And I say that as a technology coach. But that finding that balance between your use of technology wisely, judiciously, are you using it for feedback? Are you using it for, letting kids be creative? Like, I think that's stuff that technology is really amazing at. The collaborative tools, of course, like I think there's like all of that. But to say that, what I want my own daughter basically being in front of a screen the entire day, I'd be like, no, I wouldn't want that for her, right? Like she's going into first grade. Do I want her to color? Do I want her to like cut out stuff? Do I want her to like write, draw, like do things with manipulatives, like do things like with her hands in terms of her education? Most definitely yes. And so like always, I think with technology, there's a time and a place, right? But its power in terms of personalizing educational experience, like there's certainly that too. So we just gonna have to like be vigilant about it. I think it's like really time, you got to be opportunistic when it comes to your technology use and intentional, and think about what you're trying to do with your instruction and finding the resource or the tool or whatever it is that you're going to do kind of match that, right? Like, I think that's, at least as a specialist, like that's the advice that I give all the time. And then of course, because you have other problems, you have like the problem with screen monitoring, and, like even we've got like network blocks, right? So that was one of our big things this year was, it's like, great, we can go and monitor student devices. We can look at their screens. We can see what they're up to. We have the software to do that now as a county. Cool. Hey, they've just discovered 6 different workarounds around it. And let me tell you, students may not necessarily try on their algebra homework, but they are certainly going to try to get around a school network block. I can tell you that because I did that as a student when I was in high school. Like, even in the early days of the web, right? Our school had like one dedicated internet connection, or I wanted to like play this game or something, and it's like, it's blocked. And I go, is it now? That's one of my great success stories of high school, was discovering how to get around, system blocks. So again, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, you think about technology and then you think about like old school approaches are still valid, right? Like, sure, you can monitor what students are doing. You can see that on your screen, but it doesn't always beat having, it doesn't always beat like proximity. I think like proximity to students, like all of this sort of basic classroom management stuff about like walking around the room, seeing what they're doing, interacting, like nothing beats that. And I would never encourage a teacher to be teaching from their desk because they want to go watch the monitoring screens. Like they don't want to, they want to do that. So, I think going into the future, because that's one of the big things that I think the teacher is struggling with is like, well, I want to give them a test online, but there's no locked browser that we can use here in Fairfax. Like, I know they exist, but we don't have access to them necessarily. Sort of one piece of software kind of sort of does, but, that's sort of about it. And, I remember like in the classroom, that I would give online tests. Like we had to use them a lot. So, most of the time, like I would circle around the room. I would go and watch them take tests. Like I would probably stand in a place in the room where I can see most of their screens and monitor it from that way. Like, all those basics of classroom management still apply in our tech world. So, all right. And then I think that's a lot. Like I'm looking at this timer. I'm like, man, I really didn't mean for this to be a very long episode. And then just a lot of stuff on my mind just sort of came right out. So I do appreciate it. If you are still here, if you're listening, I was running this as a live stream just for kicks. And I did see like for a hot second that there were a few people watching, which was awesome. And then a comment or two, but then got disappeared. So if you're Matt Stewart and you are listening to this, cool. Thank you. I would be really curious to hear some of the feedback on the different topics between AI and all of the tech integration that I tried to bring up. So, all that is coming in the future, and then we'll see what happens. At least going ahead. I know in Fairfax we're still talking about universal design for learning, which is something that we were talking about 2 years ago. And now we're supposed to be implementing it. Like, I don't know. I just went to turnaround training about universal design, not as a concept, but about what we're supposed to be showing staff back in August. And at the end of it, I still was left with that question of what are we expecting staff to do with this? So I'm hoping at least at my school to answer that with, well, we're going to be trying out a lot of different UDL approaches, or I'm looking to build that team that wants to help carry out universal design and demonstrate it as a building and let other teachers kind of see it and see what it can do. So I'm hoping at least on my end, at least at here at Lewis High School, that is, to carry that out. I don't know what other schools are necessarily going to do. It's still sort of a mystery. Even after all of this training, it was, it wasn't too much different than last year when we basically told staff, here's UDL, here's some of the ideas. It's now a thing. Have a great year. And now this coming August is something very similar, which is, now universal design for learning is baked into the FCPS learning model. Cool. Here's some ideas about UDL. Also cool. Have a great year. We're still, I think, at that point, but I don't know. A lot of things I don't know, but I do know that I'm excited for summer. I'm excited for a few weeks off. I am thankful for everybody that has been listening to this show at all. So special shout out, whether you're here, whether you're in France, whether you're in New York, where I'm originally from, a big thank you to anyone that's been out there, kind of listening to this stream of consciousness and enjoying it at the very least, or at least finding it somewhat interesting. That's it's appreciated when I do hear from some folks about that. So, that's going to do it this year for This Is Here. I'm still Adam Schechter. You can still find me at thisisherepod@gmail.com. Also, This Is Here Pod on X, Twitter, whatever. And then the other social handles include my Lancer technology ones. That's Lancer_edtech, which I'm most active on X at the moment. And then there's also Lancer EdTech on the Blue Sky and gosh, yeah, I'm on the Twitter. Oh, what an old joke. Okay. That's about it. So I will look forward to working over the summer on some of the pieces to continue that series on audio adventures. So you might see some shorter episodes about a particular piece of technology, some of which I'll be bringing to VSTE, and you can try it out there. But that's about it. So stay tuned. Stay tuned to this channel. I hope you can subscribe over on iTunes and Spotify and wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're a classroom teacher this year, enjoy your summer. And we'll be back strong in the fall. So again, thank you all for listening. And until next time, see ya.